I'm talking with Bill Ferris and Joe Skrzynski, the pioneers of private equity in Australia, both recently recognised with inaugural Lifetime Achievement Awards in both Australia and Asia. They have been partners as private equity managers for the past 21 years. Well, gentlemen, you have experienced the economic cycle through booms and through recessions, but on any measure, 2008 has been an extraordinary year. Joe, if I could direct the first question to you. What are the key experiences that will stand Champ in good stead in these challenging times?
Well, what we've learned is how to manage private equity funds across business cycles, how to get invested in times of asset pricing volatility, how to add value to our portfolio companies in down cycles as well as up cycles, and most importantly these days, how to manage credit and lending relationships in a credit crisis. The lessons learnt and the experience from doing that over the last 21 years has become part of the culture at Champ, part of how we've managed over 33 exits to maintain an IRR of 30% over those 21 years. As importantly, we've created 230 millionaires amongst the executives of our portfolio exited companies, and they are now alongside our high net worth and business leader affiliates, which gives us a unique, absolutely unique in this market, deal flow and due diligence network.
Bill, could I direct a question to you now? Given the global financial crisis, is it going to be more difficult for private equity in vintage year 09?
Well, Rob, it's fair to say our experience over these decades that Joe just described has demonstrated that when public markets falter, the opportunities for private equity really come clear and clearer. And there's no doubt that that's what we're beginning to see and are seeing now as we move into 09, in that we've come through a period where many of our peers here and around the world have been over-exuberant in their prices in paying for transactions. We're now seeing a major correction, so the buying opportunities have never been, in recent history anyway, never been so exciting. So the 09 vintage year, in fact, for private equity, and of course for the Champ 3 fund, that's why we're so enthusiastic. The prospects have never been more exciting.
Joe, what do you see different between your plans for the Champ 3 fund compared with the Champ 2 fund?
Rob, I really don't think there's any major difference. I think what we want to do is stick with our winning formula. That's about earnings-driven value creation, about pricing discipline and focus, and on our mid-market positioning, which we know so well in this marketplace.
Given that, won't it still be difficult for Champ 3 to access debt in the transactions compared with the relatively easy access that Champ 2 and indeed earlier funds enjoyed?
Well, there may be some differences in the sense that in the immediate future, leverage ratios will be more modest. We would say, frankly, more sensible, and frankly, around the sorts of leverage ratios we've been accessing in Champ 2, because we were our own credit committees during the Champ 2 phase. But as we move into Champ 3, let me just make 2 points. At a micro level, we've just completed a senior debt raising package for our most recent transaction in Champ 2, which will close in December. So in the Australian marketplace, the Australian banks are open for credentialed private equity managers such as Champ for mid-market size transactions. As importantly, I think, and what's not often understood, is that many of the companies that we're interested in going forward in this 09-010 phase already have quite sufficient debt in place. And so we're not necessarily looking to raise. We don't feel we will be debt constrained in putting together the sorts of transactions that we do going forward.
Okay. Joe, looking at your present team, will you need to recruit other executives for Champ 3?
No, not really. Our tradition is to build up our teams during the life of one fund ahead of the next one. So since Champ 2 in 2005, we've added 6 new junior executives, taking our professional investment team to 19. This reflects our high executive to deal ratio, and the 8 senior executives in there are the same that were there for Champ 1 and Champ 2 and now obviously for Champ 3. Additionally, we can call on a similar number of investment professionals in our affiliate Castle Harlan in their office in New York, as we may require from deal to deal.
Bill, does the establishment of a Singapore office herald increased activity outside Australia?
No, Rob, I think we'd term that, ongoing emphasis on our ability to add value to our portfolio companies in the region, in the Southeast Asian region. Those that have invested with CHAMP since the 80s know that we've had this consistent step-out strategy, we call it, encouraging our portfolio companies and helping them into these higher growth markets in Southeast Asia. So the Singapore office obviously increases our ability to do that and to do it very effectively with our own people inside the marketplace, if you will. And of course, from time to time, and right now we are seeing deal flow coming now to CHAMP as a result of the Singapore office that we wouldn't have otherwise, both directly for the portfolio companies' benefits, but also we think from time to time there'll be opportunities for investments that have sourcing from within Southeast Asia but relevant to Australia in terms of their activities or our existing management teams in the portfolio companies, so that we have a special angle, if we do, with those sorts of transactions, to occasionally do a couple of them. And in the life of CHAMP 3 we would expect to do just that.
Well, gentlemen, we're almost out of time. I hear your enthusiasm for vintage 09 in private equity. How does Australia fit into the global picture?
Well, the facts are, that Australia has had the best economic growth record of any OECD country in the last 15 years, including sidestepping the 2000 recession that hit most other economies. The result of that is that our economy is very, very strong at this point. The Australian government has zero public debt, which is really unique amongst all governments in OECD countries. The Reserve Bank has interest rates at 4.25. So both the government and the Reserve Bank have enormous latitude for fiscal and monetary stimulation to maintain growth in Australia. The other thing that people sometimes forget is the very, very strong linkages that Australia now has with the Asian economies. And whilst their growth will slow a little, they will continue to grow at materially stronger growth rates than any of the mature economies in North America and Europe. So I think Australia is exceptionally well positioned for the current climate.
The reason we come to this CHAMP 3 fund so enthusiastically is because of that story of the relative strength of the Australian economy and the timing as we look to 09-010. It's a unique vintage year for private equity. And so investors looking at the vintage issue will have to have a strong appetite for not missing this vintage. And so we come to it with that timing. We come to it with the experience and the strength of the CHAMP group working through the cycles. And as Joe said, not just the Australian economy's strength, but the near Southeast Asian engine of growth as well, coupled to these carriages in Australia and New Zealand, we think is just a great opportunity and a great timing.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.